Welcome, everybody. This is Marla Miller, a writer's mama and Marketing the Muse, presenting my fourth interview with authors on the road to marketing their books. I call it Authors and Book Promotion 21st Century Style because it really is. You know, the world in publishing has changed. Not entirely, but it has changed. What I love about the interview that I'm about to do with Deborah Holt Larkin is that she is a writer she's a debut writer. Her memoir / true crime novel, A Lovely Girl, The Tragedy of Olga Duncan and the Trial of One of California's Most Notorious Killers, which is quite a title. Debuted, I
Wasn't
believe.
mine.
Okay, gotcha. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
It debuted a while ago. She's got a fabulous story that goes with this. As I said, she's a debut author and she's not 22. And what I want to offer to the audience that is listening is that if you've got a story in you, if you've got a burning story in you, never give up. Never give up. And Debbie is a prime example of a woman who had a whole career in education, but she had this story that really was rooted in her childhood, and she didn't give up, and consequently snagged an agent a couple of years ago, and who snagged a fabulous traditional publisher, Simon & Schuster. Let me just read, and I hope
Pegasus.
that it scrolls down. Yeah, Pegasus Crime.
Right.
Which is an imprint, yes?
Well, Simon & Schuster is the distributor.
Gotcha.
Pegasus Books, Pegasus Crime is an imprint of Pegasus Books, but they have this great distributor, the Simon & Schuster, that does all the distributing of their books.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because in my research, I did kind of see that and I was a little confused by it. But let me just read what Publishers Weekly, it's a long review, but it's really worth reading. In this excellent debut, Educator Larkin revisits the case of Elizabeth Duncan, who was convicted of the 1958 murder of her daughter-in-law and was the last woman to be executed in California before the Supreme Court suspended the death penalty in 1972. Larkin writes beautifully about her own coming of age, sibling rivalry, the pet bird, intermingled with the details of a horrific case. Captivated by her father's front page stories on the trial, she brought the newspaper to class for show and tell and spent hours listening to her parents discuss this case over dinner. As a result, Larkin became a lifelong true crime fan. The page turner is not to be missed. And that's from Publishers Weekly. And then from Library Journal, readers will be drawn to Larkin's first-person narrative of the events, as well as her reconstruction of this tragic true crime story. And then Debbie snagged a wonderful, if I can get it, review from her home. I'm assuming she's in San Diego, and this is from the San Diego Union Tribune, which is their major paper. In writing about what proved to be the most memorable and formative years of her life, Larkin portrays her Scout Atticus Finch love for her father and for justice in general. The book honors Olga and her community and shows the impact that horrific crime can have on all those who bear witness. Welcome to Authors and Book Promotion 21st Century Style. And boy, you are doing it. You are doing it 20th century style and 21st century style. So tell us just a little bit about you had a full career in education, but you had this book, and it was in the core of your soul.
It was the story about Olga Duncan's kidnapping and murder has shadowed me my whole life. That's the only way I can think to describe it. And I also had wanted to be a writer. I went into education, loved my career, teacher, school principal, but I never really gave up on that dream of becoming an author. And so I thought about fictionalizing the book, but the story is just stranger than fiction. So I eventually decided that I would write a true crime and eventually put my father's story about covering it and my own, no other way to say it, but obsession with that crime as a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. And so I met you at the Southern California Writers Conference, but you're going to be presenting at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference on a book panel to discuss this. You, in fact, met your agent at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I put in 10 pages for advanced reading, and I, I, met Charlotte Gousset, and we talked just a little bit about something in general. And then she said, I want you to send me your entire manuscript. And really, the top of my head just about blew off with confetti streaming because I thought,
I
well,
bet.
wow.
Yeah.
uh, and so I immediately, after we got discussing, I said, well, I have a few little things. I think I was still working on the epilogue and some other things. And she said, well, that's okay. Just send it to me by September. I'll be back from my trip to Greece. And so I worked on finalizing it and sent her that manuscript and then waited a couple months to hear from her.
Was she the
And
only agent that you had interface with?
well, yeah, I never sent out, I worked
Amazing.
on query letters. I know it's just, it's really kind of an impossible story. But I worked on query letters very diligently.
Yeah.
I went to sessions at writers' conferences, and so I had worked on query letters, but I had never actually sent one out.
Amazing.
Um, I had gone to some other, I think at the Southern California Writers Conference early on, quite a few years before I finished the book. I had also done some advanced submissions with agents, but I was just kind of looking for feedback. And even though some of them asked me to send pages, that was pretty much it.
Okay, I want to get back to Charlotte because in fact
Mhm.
you did send her revisions and she took a pass on it initially. Tell us a little bit
Right.
about that.
So in September, after meeting her at the conference in June, I sent her the manuscript and waited to hear back from her. And I finally got the email that said, you know, I like this book, but I think I'm going to have to take a pass on it because I believe that the pace of the book has a problem. That in interweaving your memoir through the crime story, it's slowing down the pace of the crime story. And she
And what
said,
did you
but,
do? Yeah, go ahead.
well, she said, but if you would like to work on this problem, I'll take another look at it. And so I thought, okay, she's interested. I'm going to take advantage of it. I had a few people in my writing group said, oh yeah, you should move on to somebody else. I thought, I've got somebody interested here.
Yeah.
So I worked on editing it. I hired an editor to help me
Okay.
make some of the uh, cuts that I needed to
So
do.
I want to
And
make a point. You made an
Mhm.
investment in your product, which is your
Yes,
story. All right, go
I
ahead.
did.
And so you hired an editor.
I did, and
Uh-huh.
sent it back to Charlotte. And again, I had to wait a couple of months to hear from her. Although she would send me little updates. Well, I don't think I'm not reading this, but she's got a lot of the books. She was busy, so eventually we had a Zoom call, and she said that she'd like to offer me a contract or I guess it's called an agent agreement
Uh-huh.
to represent the book to publishers.
And from that point until the time she placed it, how long was that, Deb?
I think, well, first of all, we worked together on a, a book proposal because this is a nonfiction book.
Okay.
So after she sent out a couple of pitches, she thought maybe she could do it without a proposal because memoirs lots of times don't have it. But she got, some people asking for proposals.
Okay.
So we worked quite a while on that. And there was a little bit of an issue. My book is what they call a mixed genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard sometimes to know how you're going to pitch this, and eventually how they're going to market it.
Mm-hmm.
So we worked a lot on that, and then she started sending it out um, to publishers. And these were publishers that I recognized their names, and I was thinking, wow,
Mm-hmm.
when we got rejections, and she would always send me the email that would show what they had said. The other thing that made
Was
me
that
kind
helpful
of
to you?
yes, it
Okay.
was.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I could see where they were going. A couple of them said, we don't know how to market a book like this
Because it was a
because
double genre of true crime and
exactly.
memoir.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so how did they decide what
Well,
did Pegasus Crime eventually slot it as?
uh, true crime.
Okay.
They did.
Okay.
They slotted it as true crime. Um, and
And the narrator
they,
part of it is the memoir.
Right. The
Yeah,
memoir is written in first person. The
got
true
it.
crime chapters are written in third.
Is that how you had crafted it, or was that the suggestion of editors at Pegasus Crime?
No, that was how um uh that's how I wrote it.
So you
And also,
interwove your first
yes.
person in with your third person.
Yeah,
Very good. Yeah,
that was it from the beginning. But
wonderful.
surprisingly enough, once Pegasus Crime got it, there was very little editing.
Okay.
You know, they pretty much took it, and I was always worried that because of my writing group said, "Oh, this is too long, Debbie. You know, they're never going to accept this." But nobody said a word about the length,
What's the
and
word count?
140,000.
Wow, that's a big
Maybe
book.
maybe 139,000. Yeah, but you know,
Yeah.
I noticed there's a lot of books that are getting
Yeah.
longer and longer now. Some of my favorite authors
Interesting.
that have, 400 and some, and some there's some that are in the 500 page range now.
Interesting,
So
because the trend was going shorter
it
because of our
was.
lack of attention span, as
Hmm.
evidenced on social media.
Right.
And now you're saying that it's going longer. I'll keep my eye on that because I've got a client who's got a really long book. And
Yeah.
so
And
that's good news. That's good news. So about
and
139,000 words.
yeah, and one of the things that Charlotte said when I finally got enough the guts to say something to her about the length of it after I'd already signed with her. And I said, you worried? Are you worried that this book is too long? And she said, well, how long is it? And I told her, and she was kind of startled. And she said, it's such a fast read. I didn't even notice. I didn't even
Interesting.
realize.
Boy,
So,
that's what's called good storytelling, Debbie. When people
okay.
don't notice that they're reading a really long book. And I want to talk a little bit about, when did the book come out?
October 2022. So
Okay.
about 7 or 8 months, 7 months ago, I guess.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your marketing strategies and what you've been
Okay.
doing. Give me the one that has worked the best for you so far.
I believe hiring my own publicist was a very smart move.
Okay, so tell me what your publicist has done.
The publicist, well, there was a publicist at Pegasus, and then there
Mhm.
was the publicist that I hired. And fortunately, they knew each other and they worked well together.
Ah,
So, but I specifically asked the editor at Pegasus, "Can you recommend a publicist for me?" Because I wanted them to be, liking each
compatible.
other.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So they they got podcasts. They got me. I think I was at
Good.
three or four different bookstores the week that it came out. Um, they got reviews for me. Those reviews, Pegasus got the publicist at
Wonderful.
Pegasus got the reviews that
Yeah.
you just read.
And
But
so I want to interject this because when your publisher has your book in hand, if you don't ask them, you must say to them, where are you going to be submitting this for
right.
review
Hmm.
before it comes out? Because after it comes out, it's too late. And so
Yeah.
your publicist at Pegasus was doing her job or his job. Excellent,
Uh,
excellent.
right. And they have what they call ARCs. That was new to me.
Tell us a
Advanced
little bit about
readers.
that. Yeah, good.
Yeah, they had these advanced readers copies that
Mhm.
wasn't even quite the final edit of the book, I don't think. And they would send this out to all these potential reviewers. And my publicist was able to have those also. And one of the things is Pegasus went after the big reviewers, and my publicist did a lot with more of the influencers and small
Where did they find
things.
them?
They are just in their arsenal of,
Cool.
they're experienced, and they were able to do this. And so I was getting these links all the times with these blogs and various websites that were having reviews on my book. And I think also that one of the best things that the publishers that I hired did was she had me write what she called original essays, and they
Okay.
were connected with my book, something that was related to my book.
Okay.
And then she would pitch them to all of these online periodicals that she had worked with and knew. and they would run the essay. I ended up having 3 of them published, run the essay with a picture of my book jacket and a little something about Deborah Holt Larkin's book is coming out,
Wonderful.
October 2nd. And this is what blew me away. I'm so sorry my dad didn't live to see this. One of them was in Newsweek, and I wrote it about how a crime in my community, changed my life or, affected my whole life. And I went into how I happened to write that and what the process was. I wrote another one they submitted to Writer's Digest about writing this
Wonderful.
nonfiction book in a literary style. And then another one on crime reads, which I just wrote something about the problems with amateur hired killers.
So then let me ask you this, because we're running out of time and I don't want
Sure.
to make this
Right.
much
Right. And
longer.
I have other things that I have one other thing I want to say that I think it really works
Well,
for
let
people.
me just ask you this. So it pays to find the right publicist. And
Exactly.
how long did you before the book came out, when did you hire the publicist, or was that the
I
Pegasus publicist?
No, they all started the editor at Pegasus says you need to get in touch with them right now. I think I probably hired them 6 months at least
Good.
before.
Okay.
She says you need to get on their schedule, but they didn't start doing stuff until maybe 2 months or
So
3 months before.
what I want to emphasize to writers, if you're not going down the traditional road, or if you don't have the guidance of a publishing house that understands these things, I want to emphasize to writers that you must, if you're going to get a publicist, and I highly recommend hiring one, but getting a referral from
Right.
someone like Debbie, is that you have to hire them. The traditional time frame is 6 to 9 months
Yeah.
before the book comes out. And you did that, and then they started working very actively a couple of months. One last thing from Deborah Holt Larkin on her memoir / true crime story that came out in November of 2022, A Lovely Girl, the tragedy of Olga Duncan and the trial of one of California's most notorious killers. Your last point. There it is. Your last
Well,
point, Debbie, and then
I,
we'll
I
say
just
adios.
I just want to say to the people who are public or marketing their books that one of the things that I found has been very helpful now that I'm on my own, and the publicist sort of gave me information on what I should do after they're not working for me anymore, is book clubs. One book club begets another book club.
Good.
I recently went to one, and I did a store presentation just before. Well, there were 2 other book clubs from that town who were also having book, and they had heard it from the first book club, and then somebody at the book club said, oh yeah, my sister in Chicago, her book club is doing it in a couple of months because I told her how great the book was.
Wonderful.
So it's all word of mouth after that initial push. So
Good.
really anything you can get into the hands of readers, speaking events at Rotary clubs, whatever, because after the initial push by the publicist, it's all word of mouth, and that's what I'm working on now.
And it's hard work, isn't it?
It is.
And it's consistent. You must do it consistently. And it sounds like you're doing a bang up job of selling your product, which is also your book, your baby, the literary love of your life.
Yes, it is.
And I'm delighted for your success. Debbie, thank you so much for coming on Authors
Well,
and Book
thank you.
Promotion, 21st Century Style. You've given us lots of tips, and I will be sharing this all over.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me, Marla.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Toodles.